Hi guys. Okay, so Warpath 2.0 is on Kickstarter, and I am very keen to find out more about this game. So I'm joined by Stewart from Mantic.
Hi guys.
One of the team leaders on the Warpath 2.0 project. And what we're going to do, it's not a battle report or a demo game. It's more of a discussion of the key concepts of the game, so as I can get a better understanding of it, and hopefully you guys at home can get a better understanding of it as well. Now, Stewart, Warpath on Kickstarter is basically two games.
Yes.
So you have Warpath, as we're going to discuss here today on this video, which is the big mass battle version of the game. And then you also have Warpath Firefight, which is a kind of a slightly scaled down. It's more every model counts.
Yes.
A bit more like what people would be familiar with Bolt Action and Warhammer 40k.
Yes, that kind of scale. Yeah.
So, why are you doing that, or what's the idea behind that?
Well, originally we started out with Warpath a few years ago, and that was focusing on the big battles because we have affordable miniatures, and people can afford to get armies across the whole tabletop and play games like that. But we didn't want them to take all day, so the idea was to get a quick rule set that achieves that goal.
Now, you guys have achieved something very similar with Kings of War.
Absolutely.
Kings of War is renowned for being a very user-friendly game that plays very, very fast. It's fabulous in tournament play, for example.
Yeah.
So this is an area that you do know. You know, all of us in the industry will accept that Kings of War has nailed that very well. So you're trying to bring, I suppose, the similar benefits then to the sci-fi genre.
We're absolutely trying to replicate that with sci-fi.
Yeah.
And the version that we had back in 2011 was very much a Kings of War style game. I think what we've realised since then is that that wasn't quite sci-fi enough.
Yes.
So what we've been trying to do recently is change that game and make it feel more sci-fi. So that's where we've got to with this version of Warpath.
Okay.
The decision to then branch that out into two games was following feedback from our community, which is something that's very, very important to us. There were a lot of people who liked the idea of mass battle games and the ability to play those quickly. They saw the rules, liked how they work. But on the other hand, there were people who that sort of game wasn't for them. It wasn't the mechanics, it was the style of the game.
It takes a while to build up a collection big enough to truly benefit from a game of that type.
It does. So it was somewhere where we could have people that have started with Dead Zone, for example, and they'll scale up through Warpath Firefight. And once they've got their collection, they can then start with the big battles.
So so Warpath. The way I like to think about this, and after having talked to you guys about it, it's like Warpath in 3 steps. Okay.
Yeah.
You can do your Dead Zone, which is like every bullet counts. It's really kind of granular, but in a very fun way. Check out some of the battle reports I've done with James Hewitt on Dead Zone. It is just the best fun. You then have Firefight, which will be your step up from that, which is more kind of units, but every model counts. So where the model is will really come into play.
Yes.
And then above that there, when you want to start getting into your bigger kind of sci-fi battles, you have Warpath itself.
Yes. Okay.
I want you to talk me through some of the concepts then of the game. So what we've done is we've laid out a gaming table here. I'm a big fan of narrative. So I'm going to impart a little bit of narrative onto you guys. So what I have laid out here, and I might do a little episode with myself and Lloyd putting this together to talk you through why we do things the way we do it. But what we came up with was a corporation encampment, a corporation compound. So it's all bunkers and barricades and things like that. And the concept for it is that it's already been overrun by the plague. So the plague have come in and chewed on the corporation, turned some of them into plague monsters and things like that. And the mission that we would looking forward to playing out on this properly is the enforcers coming in to sort the thing out, because that's what they do. They jump in and sort stuff out. One of the great things about enforcers is they have jump packs. So they can come in from these other sides where it's all kind of the ruined city on the outskirts of the compound, and they can jump over and jump in and start giving it to the plague. So that's the tabletop. I'm using this beautiful mat from Deep Cut. It's definitely worth having a look. The texture's the textures on this mat are just fantastic. It really does bring the whole table to life. Okay, so that's where we're at. That's what's going on. Talk me through some concepts of how we might play that out.
Okay, so to start with, like all Mantic games, we've tried to keep the core mechanics, the moving, shooting, fighting, as simple as possible. We've taken a lot of bits out of those and streamlined them as much as they can be done. And then we tried to layer the tactical options on top of that.
Yeah.
So you can learn how to play with just moving and shooting, but then you can start to do it in a different way and do it in different order, things like that. So the game is very much about tactical choice and about what you do and when, less so about the complexity of what dice you're rolling. It's about just making decisions. So
yes.
That's what we've tried to do with the game. That's something that will carry through into both this and Firefight, because they're built on the same core. And the other thing that this does is to make it feel sci-fi, which is something that which moved away from Kings of War, is that firstly it's alternate activation, so the game is a lot more reactive. So I move something, you move something in response, and then so on. And we've also broken the units down into smaller pieces. So in Kings of War you can have a horde of 40 models moving forward in one go. In this, there's nothing bigger than a team of 5.
So it's like 5-man fire teams.
Yes.
And let's see if I can just show you that. So this is an example of a 5-man fire team here. And we've just put them onto temporary bases. You can choose whether you want to put them on a movement tray or not. I think it's actually quite convenient to put it on a movement tray.
Yeah, we've written rules that will allow you to play with the models individually, but for a quicker game, this is something that some people like to do. Yeah.
So to discuss, there is a nice big meta game to this game because although your units are 5-man squads, maybe on their trays if you want to use it that way, you can point out special equipment and stuff like that into the units.
Yes, absolutely. While we have taken complexity out of the game mechanics to make the actual play of the game much quicker, there is still detail in the army building. So you can pick your units from a selection of different types of team that are armed differently. And they can be in different combinations. And then each of those teams can be upgraded with certain weapons that will give them extra special rules or more dice to fire, things like that.
Okay. Right, so to talk through some of the basics then, what's our first step?
Okay, first thing to do is probably to look at the stat line of each unit. So every unit has 5 stats. They've got their movement stat, which is how far they move. Accuracy, which is what they need to roll to hit. Their defense, which is what the opponent needs to roll to damage them. And then the last 2 are tied together. We've got resilience, which is how many hits each team can take before they are destroyed. And finally, nerve, which works in a similar way, but that's how many hits they can take before they are suppressed and they get penalties in the game.
Because suppression is a big part of this game.
It is very much, yes.
So from any newcomer coming to this game, and certainly in the short introduction I've had so far, when we talk tactically about this game, this is very much tactical about knowing which unit to activate, when, what to do with that unit. It's not as straightforward as, I'm just going to go up here and lay down fire on them. You want to work out how you're going to be doing things and the order you're going to be able to do things in order to truly unlock the potential of the next units that you're likely to activate further down the sequence. Yeah,
it's something that we've done to promote an army using combined arms, so that you don't get, like you get in fantasy, a dwarf firing line where your whole army does exactly the same thing and does it very well.
Yeah.
What we wanted in this was to have armies that were more varied. So they've got some big monsters, they've got some stuff that runs it in front to block lines of sight, things like that, and it invites you to do all of those things at once. So take the Plague, for example.
Yeah.
They've got some troops that are very good in combat, such as the 2nd gens we've got down here.
So these big guys here, so they're your close combat guys, yeah?
Yeah, but what they will find in this game is that if they just run across the field, they will die before they get to the enemy.
Yeah.
So a Plague player needs to use things like the zombies as a screening unit. So they run those out in front.
The zombies here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they'll also use their shooting units, such as the 3rd gens here.
Yeah.
To suppress the enemy, keep their heads down, to make the path clear for the 2nd gens to run across. Okay,
so your 3rd gens can still, they can operate weapons and stuff like that.
Yes.
So you're starting to already kind of look at the basic tactical options of laying down fire, trying to cause some suppression onto the opponent's unit, at which point you then later in the sequence activate your big, close combat guys and get them in to finish the job.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do it correctly, the chances are they won't going to be able to finish the job, and they end up caught out in the open. And so there is, as you say, a real focus on the combined arms. So building in that I suppose variety of support roles within the forces you build.
Yeah, and we've also used that to build variety between different armies. So the Plague, when they're shooting, for example, they're not very accurate. They're not very good at killing people with their guns.
Yeah.
They kind of fire them wildly. So it's unlikely the Plague will do a lot of killing. What they will do, however, is get a lot of shots out there and keep people's heads down.
Yes.
So that's what their focus is with shooting. The Enforcers, on the other hand, are very accurate.
Yes.
They shoot to kill.
Yeah, so for
they're
example...
They're more clinical.
Here, I have like an Enforcer's, almost like a sniper team. And these guys can actually do some real damage with this. So if I'm using this particular unit, I may be trying to pick out something in particular in my opponent's army.
Yeah, so there's a couple of rules for these guys, for example. Those Pathfinders have tag rifles, which means they can actually mark targets for the rest of the army.
And there's combined arms again.
Yes.
Okay.
And in addition, snipers have a special rule where normally when you target a unit, the owning player will take off their casualties. And you've got snipers, they can choose who the casualties are.
So you can really start to impose yourself upon the other player.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm liking this now. These are rules I didn't know, so yeah, okay. Right, so let's talk a little bit about turn activation to begin with. So how does the actual turn sequence work?
At the beginning of the game, both players will roll off to see who gets to go first in the first turn. And then from that point on, players will alternate activating their units one at a time. When you get to the end, if one player's got anything left, they can finish off. At the end of the turn, all of the activation tokens are removed, and you start again. And
it's based on dead zone in this instance, that whoever finished first gets to go first.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, at the basic level, it's just one unit at a time, alternately activating.
Now I want to talk a little bit about the units, because right now I have these guys here. So this is just they're standard Enforcers, aren't they?
Yeah, and they've been upgraded with a burst laser in that unit.
Okay, so there's a burst laser there. Okay. Now, that is a unit, just a single unit of 5 guys.
Yes.
However, on their stat line, on their actual profile page, it may say that a unit can contain up to 2 units. Is that correct?
Yes. So Enforcer units are between 1 and 2 teams. So they're quite small and elite.
So I need to be careful now. This is a team, okay? And if I do so decide, it could be a team and a unit.
Yep.
Or it could be 2 teams as 1 unit.
Yes.
Okay, so that would be the 2 teams. So and then whenever I do my activation, I'm activating them. Do they have to stay together, or can they go?
They stay together.
Okay, so they would stay together.
Yeah. So there are benefits to having separate teams because you can move them in different ways. But the benefit of having them together is more shots at once. So you're more likely to overcome the opponent's resilience.
Okay, and then movement is just some basic examples.
Yes.
Movement is what, just like 6 inches, whatever it says on the profile.
Yes, they've got a speed value, and keeping it as simple as possible, you measure from the edge of the base, they move that far. So
just a simple movement, just as so. Okay.
Yes. In addition to basic movement, there's a few extra types of movement. So when models activate, they can either do 2 short actions or 1 long action, like you can in Dead Zone.
That's a Dead Zone attribute there. Okay, yes.
Yeah, so a move action is a short action. They can also do a double move, which is a long action, and that takes their whole turn to do.
Yep.
It's just double distance. They can also move into and out of terrain, and that's also a long action. And they can also disengage from combat if they want to. But again, a long action will take their turn.
Let's talk about terrain for a moment,
Sure.
okay? So let's say I have this unit here, okay? And these guys, I'll just remove these guys out of the equation so as to simplify things. I have a building here. I've agreed with my opponent beforehand that it has windows, so I can shoot out of the windows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It has entry points at either end. So if I just get this other end, so entry points at either end. If I want to, say if I have these guys here, okay, and it's the beginning of my turn, I can utilize a long action to enter that building.
Yes.
They're now considered in the building.
Yep.
And then in the next turn, they can either exit from here or fire out any of these windows, and
Yes.
is that basically correct?
Yeah, terrain has a big advantage in the game. A lot of the objectives, when we start to add more missions in, will be about taking and holding pieces of terrain.
Yeah.
So there are benefits for being in there. It gives you a lot more protection, and it also makes your unit a lot more flexible. Essentially, the reason it's a long action is because you're not just moving into that space. You're moving into the space, then you're going out around the windows,
Securing
crouching
it.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, fortifying the building and aiming out the windows. That's what you're doing.
Now, if you are dealing with a particularly large piece of terrain, what has been suggested is that you actually segment it
Yes.
into different pieces of terrain. So you're not, if that was one big long tunnel there, I'm not entering here and then just suddenly popping out the other end. So you would segment it. And the same if you're working with height, you would just segment it into different pieces of terrain. So you move up the terrain over a sequence of turns.
For most games, they'll be on things around this size. So that's one piece, that's one piece. But yeah, if you had a very long one, you just split it into.
Yeah.
You move
I
into
like
one,
that
move
because
into the next.
this is all absolutely necessary for a game that's trying to achieve what this game is trying to achieve. You know, ultimately, I've done a very small demo with just a handful of units aside, and it played very slick. So it scales down very well.
Yeah.
But that's not its core purpose. Its core purpose is to scale up very well.
Yes.
Where you and your mates can get together and play on 8 feet of table, or 12 feet of table if you wanted to get your club together, and just play out a mass engagement. This allows that to happen, and it starts to remove some of the, I suppose, fuzzy rules that work very well when you're moving individual models, but can make a game, instead of it being over in a couple of hours, can make a game last several hours, which becomes a bit of a slog.
Yeah,
really.
so those are some of the things we've had to abstract out a little to get to this game, which is why the standard stat line is for a team of 5, it's not for one man.
Okay, so that's your kind of movement. Individual units and teams and stuff have their own traits. So, for example, the corporation, they have jetpacks, so they can actually jump up and jump over and you know, move around stuff a lot easier. Things like barricades or walls. So, if we just get this, typically there's a rule for this, that if it's not higher than the guys, they just kind of jump over it and ignore it. Is that basically it?
Yes. If you've played the new version of Kings of War, it's gone to an abstract line of sight system where everything has a height.
Yes.
So in Warpath, for example, general infantry are height 2. Things like barricades are height 1. If it's shorter than you, you can just walk over it, jump over it, whatever.
Yeah.
You can also see over it and be seen over it. If it's taller than you, so we would say this building might be height 3, then you can't see over it, you can't move over it. The Enforcers, of course, have got jump packs. They can ignore terrain when they move.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So that's the basic concepts of movement in place. So I can see that. Let's talk about shooting.
Now, that is probably the next main point where this differs from Kings of War.
Yeah.
Because Kings of War is very much about combat.
Correct.
Because the setting that it's in, everyone's got swords and shields, and that's what they do. It's not the same in this.
No, we learned very well from Indiana Jones that a man with a sword and a man with a gun is not going to end well. So if you're about to tell me that this sci-fi game is more based around shooting, that doesn't surprise me. So, okay, so what are the key concepts of the shooting of their shooting abilities and how shooting works?
Again, the core rules are very simple. So it is roll to hit, roll to damage, remove casualties. At a basic level, that's all you need to do. But different weapons can do it in different ways. So every team's stat line will list how many dice they get and the AP.
Yes.
Some weapons will then have additional rules. So things like the heavy machine gun in the plague unit down here.
So that's this unit here. Which guy is it that's the heavy machine gun?
This one here.
There. So let's say his heavy machine gun. Yeah.
Yep. That's got the suppressive fire rule, which means that when it hits a unit, they take additional suppression points.
Yes.
So that's designed for hosing an area down, making the opponents drop down and not fire back. There are also things such as flamers and grenades that make it a lot easier to assault into terrain.
Yes.
As I said, terrain is very important. So something you need to think about when you're building your army is whether to take some of those units. Because if your opponent fortifies himself in terrain, you'll need a way of getting them out again.
Okay, right. Now, in shooting, Please tell me there's not a whole bunch of shooting tables and stuff like that I have to work out.
No, there are no tables. The way that the stats work is exactly like Kings of War. So you have an accuracy stat. That's what you need to roll.
So that's my to hit. So I can look at my stat line and I know for them to hit whoever they're going to hit, I just need to beat that stat.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are modifiers to that, but again, they're simple. If your unit has been suppressed, you're at -1. If you are shooting into cover, you're at -1. There are some buildings that are classed as fortified. That's another -1. That's all the modifiers there are.
And then to hit, how do I work out what I need to actually do you some damage?
That is, again, like Kings of War, you've got a defense value on the opponent, and that's what you're rolling against, which is modified by any AP on your weapon.
Okay, so if I have AP 1 and you have a defense of...
Say I've got defense 4+.
4+, yeah.
That AP 1 will modify it down to a 3+.
So so if my hit is a 2+, I reroll 2s, and then if 4 modified down by 1, I then need to roll 3s to actually do the damage. So then how does damage then translate into killing?
Right. The resilience stat on each unit tells you how many hits each team will take before it's removed from the table. So these zombies here have got a resilience of 3.
Okay.
So the amount of damage you've done is compared to that resilience, and however many times you've hit it, you take off a team. So if you've done 6 damage, for example, you would remove 2 of your teams. Okay.
And let me give an example then. So if I have put down a load of fire on these guys here, okay, that's a unit of 4 teams.
Yes.
Yeah. I've done 7 damage. Okay. That means 2 of those teams get removed.
Yes.
Okay. And then the 1 point is discarded. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That 1 point is used for suppression, but we can.
Okay. We'll come back to suppression.
Yeah.
If I've done 2 damage, nothing gets removed, and the 2 gets discarded. I suppose the point I'm trying to make is it's all about full kills. And whatever doesn't create a full kill is just ignored. It's just like they've taken some shots and stuff like that there. So there's very little bookkeeping and tracking involved in all of this.
Suppression is tracked, damage is not.
Okay, that for big games is another key thing. You want as little kind of tracking and stuff like that as possible. Okay, all right. So let's talk a bit about suppression then.
Sure. Suppression, we wanted that to be a key concept of Warpath, because in a war, especially one that's played out in an urban setting, it's not so much about what you kill, it's about controlling the battlefield.
Yes.
And being in the right place at the right time. And to do that, you need to stop the opponent being in those places that you want to be. So units have the ability to suppress other units, which will hold them in place, stop them moving as far, keep them in terrain, and potentially make them run away if you put enough firepower onto them. Because if you've watched a lot of modern war films, there's a lot of people hiding in buildings and just getting shot at, but not being killed, and that's what this represents.
Okay. So suppression is something that will build up over time. So if I put 1 point of suppression onto a unit, does it go onto a team or does it go onto a unit?
It goes onto the unit as a whole.
Okay.
Suppression is an element of resource management in the game, because it will build up on teams, and your opponent can try and focus all their firepower on one or try and suppress everything a little bit. But when it's then my turn, I've got the option of trying to bring that back down again before I act.
Yes.
But it will take some of my actions to do it.
Suppression sticks. It's not like wounds that if you didn't make enough, it goes away. Each point of suppression is tracked and gradually builds up and gradually starts to cause you more and more problems. Okay. So what kind of problems then does suppression start to cause? And at what point does it start causing that?
Yeah, well, that's where the nerve value on the stat line comes into play. Once a unit has enough suppression points to reach its nerve value, it becomes suppressed.
Yeah.
At that point, it will move at half distance, and it'll be at -1 to shoot and in assault.
Yeah.
So it's quite heavily modified there. It can still act, but not as well as normal. So it might be worth trying to reduce it down below that threshold. When you get to double that number, the unit is grounded. And that means it's completely gone to ground. It can't do anything except rally, which takes its whole turn to do, to reduce the suppression back down again.
And does rally remove all of the suppression on it, or how much?
It will usually remove all of it because it's D6 plus 1, but if you've put so much firepower into a unit that's got 10, 12, then they won't be able to in one turn.
Okay, so there are means of suppressing a unit and making sure he's suppressed. Yeah. So, okay.
The other thing with units that are that heavily suppressed is they might just flee the battlefield. So any units that are grounded at the start of the turn, they must make a test to see if they can stay or if they'll run away. And again, that's just a roll made against their nerve value.
And runaway is not run backwards, it's just removal from the battlefield.
Yes. Okay. So that's a way for armies like the Plague, which, as I said, are not great at shooting to kill, If they can suppress a unit enough, they can make it flee. So they can still do that.
Grant, you can really start to see how you can utilize this rule structure to really charge up the flavor of individual armies. It's actually and that's a nice trait of a good rule structure, because ultimately, if the rules don't support a narrative, it's chess.
Yes.
You know, it's okay. So that is suppression. Let's talk a bit about combat then. How does combat work, and what are the options there? So,
with combat, again, this is something that in a sci-fi setting would be less likely to happen.
Yeah.
The focus of this game is really about positioning and controlling the battlefield and shooting. So with combat, we've kept it quick and brutal. Obviously, with armies like the Plague, it will happen.
Yes.
But when it does happen, it's over quickly. We don't want things that happen in historical or fantasy games where two units will meet in the middle of the battlefield and stand there for ages hitting each other.
Thump, thump, thump. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've tried to avoid that as much as possible. Combat is very brutal. There is no rolling to hit. You just go straight into rolling to damage. And then you remove casualties. So it's just a two-step process.
If we get an example here, okay, let's bring two teams to here, okay? So, if you want to bring these guys up as well. All right. So, is there things about the order in which combat takes place? Like, does it matter if these guys charge into combat versus being charged in combat?
Yes. The unit that charges gets an additional modifier. So you would want to be the one to charge because you'll get the benefit of it. In addition to that, if you charge into a unit in a sci-fi game, they're not just going to stand there and take it. They're going to shoot you in the face. Or if they can tactically withdraw to a better position, they'll do that.
Oh, so there's a response mechanism in there.
Yes. And that's another thing we've done to try and move the game away from being a combat-oriented game. Yeah. So units do have a response they can make. They can do a blaze away action and shoot at you as you run at them. They can move back out of distance, possibly. Or they can stand there and regroup, ready to take the charge if they wanted to do that.
Right, I have to ask at this point then, because this is the potential close of the circle where all the tactics start to become clear to me. I take it, and I'm going to guess, that if I can suppress them first, they don't get that option, do they?
Well, units that is suppressed won't be able to do that as well, because it won't be able to move as far away.
Okay, yeah.
And also, if it's grounded, it can't react at all.
Right.
The other place that comes in is that, because it's alternate activation, you can't react if you've already activated that turn. So you have to think about the order you're going to do things.
Now it becomes clear. So a tactically weak option would be to charge into a unit that hadn't activated. Whereas if I can draw my opponent into activating him, and then say, "Ha-ha! I now have my chance," and then charge in. Do they not get that response
no, they don't get that response.
Okay.
There's a couple of other things you can do there. One other tactic might be you could charge an opponent that you know can run away because you want them to, because that's taken their unit and pushed it into a position it can no longer fire. So you may not have reached combat, but you have taken that unit out of the game for a turn.
Yes.
So you still achieved something. The other thing to mention about reactions is that in terrain you have a few more things you can do. Yeah. Because you're more prepared for the enemy running at you. So you can have more powerful shooting attacks. And you can also take your activation token off if you have already activated. Right.
So this is coming into that, get into terrain, secure it, and then for your opponent, get grenades.
Yes.
Get grenades.
Yes.
Now, one thing that's worth pointing out is unlike a fantasy game, there's no kind of bonuses for rears or flanks and stuff like that there. The models are basically considered as if they've been moving around 360 degrees and stuff like that. So that's a nice degree of simplification for a sci-fi game, in my opinion anyway. Okay, so that's your kind of your basic combats. Now, a big thing at the Kickstarter has been about unlocking vehicles.
Yes.
Okay, one of which I have here. I'm sorry, I've got to do it. How do vehicles work? Can we talk a little bit about them?
Absolutely, yeah. Again, to keep the game simple, the majority of their rules are exactly the same as infantry. So the way that they move and shoot and fight, and the way that they have 2 short actions, 1 long action, all of that is exactly the same.
Yeah.
There's a couple of places in which they differ. One of them is the way they take damage. to represent the chance that you've hit the fuel tank or you've hit the pilot or anything like that. 6s explode when you're attacking vehicles.
I'm a huge fan of exploding 6s. So basically, when you roll any 6s, you get to re-roll to create even more hits. And lovely.
So that's something that balances out the fact that they will tend to have 8+, 9+ defense.
Yeah.
In which case, you'll need high AP weapons to take them down. Things such as the Strider, any walkers, the way in which they take damage.
So this is the Plague Strider.
Yep.
It's a walker model. Okay, so what about it?
Things like this, the way in which they take damage is the only thing that differentiates them from infantry, rules-wise.
Yes.
So otherwise, that moves around the table just like an infantry unit. Things such as tanks or planes have got a few extra rules. They can't go into a building, and they assault in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
This will run in and fight like a big person, whereas a tank can't do that.
Yeah.
It can, however, run troops over.
All right. Okay. I'm in heaven now. Okay. Right. So I can run troops over. Yeah.
Yeah. The simplest way that works is basically if a tank charges a unit, it can attack it as if it was assaulting it normally.
Yeah.
If that unit charges the tank, it doesn't fight back.
So it's worth attacking a tank, but if a tank's coming up to attack you, you really want to get out of the way. Yeah. I also have these, which are probably two of the coolest bikes I have seen in sci-fi yet. Check these out. So how did these work? I'm sorry, I've got to do it again. Okay. Boyhood dreams. How do they work?
So, as we've established, most infantry comes in teams of 5.
Yep.
Anything that's bike-sized, also like the second gens here, these are large infantry, so they come in teams of 2.
Okay, so I just put those guys in as well. So, teams of 2, teams of 5.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Other than that, they work just like infantry.
Right. I want to talk about vehicles. Clearly, the game is designed to allow me to have a lot of vehicles if I want. Yeah. So as I gradually build up my collection, I'm hoping basically at no point do I feel like I've got too much collection for this game. If I want to do a lot of different, because even this flyer, it has a number of different modes, doesn't it? There's different kinds of setup. It can deploy troops, or it can be set up for bombing, or it can be set up to be more gun heavy. Yeah,
as you'll see on the Kickstarter, one thing we're really trying to do is come up with at least 2 or 3 options for every vehicle.
Yeah.
And that way, if you've got multiples, you can use them in different ways for different jobs.
Combined arms again.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this Interceptor here is the basic loadout. So it's got a troop compartment on the bottom, burst lasers on the wings.
Let's just see if you can see there's the troop compartment. I can actually open that up, and you can see inside. So is it standard enforcers can jump out of this?
Yeah, you can deploy them inside it. It starts the game off the table and come on, they jump out the back.
Oh, nice. One of the rules I believe this has, it can do strafing runs.
Yes, that is something that's exclusive to flyers. So the way that works is it's like a normal double move action. You draw a line from one point to another. Any unit it passes over, it gets shot at. So
then you remove it from the table.
Then you remove it from the table. You have to bring it on the following turn.
Bring it on the following turn.
So it's not something you can do every turn.
Yeah.
But it does mean you can attack 3 or 4 units in one go.
Well, anything else?
I think we've covered most of the basics there.
Okay, guys, that is that. This is just a general concepts of Warpath.
Yeah, I was going to say we've covered most of the basics, but there is one part of the game that we haven't covered.
Oh, what's that?
Orders.
What are orders?
As I said, we've taken this game.
No. I'm enjoying the game as it is now. So, what are you about to add here?
What we've done is we've taken a lot of the complexity out of the core mechanics. So the activation sequence is just I go, you go, 1 unit at a time.
Yeah.
Movement and shooting and combat are all very simplified. However, again, to add in some tactical choice, we have orders. These are things that your commander can do to influence the battlefield slightly. So things you couldn't normally do. You can activate 2 units at the same time.
Right.
You can take a unit that has already activated and activate it again. You can
so
do an activation with
this is where you can set up things like ambushes and traps and that's nice. So mechanically, how do orders work? How do you pull off an order?
Yeah. Well, at the start of the game, when you're selecting your army, you will be looking out for units that have a command stat in their special rules. So the enforcers, every squad sergeant gives them a command point. They can have captains that give them 2. They can have orbital commanders that give them even more.
Yeah.
All of those are added together at the start of the game to give you a command pool, and that's what these dice are for.
I was wondering what the little green dice were for. Can we get a shot of these? Okay. So it's a little green dice.
Yep.
They have a number of different kinds of spots. So like 3 spots, no spots, 1 spot, 2 spots with a plus icon. Now, obviously, these are just prototypes. So,
yes.
Okay, explain to me how they work then.
Right. With all the orders you can give, depending on how powerful they are level 1, 2, or 3.
Yes.
So a level 1 order might be you can make a triple move action.
Yes.
Or you can shoot, but you can reroll your misses. There'll be quite basic things like that. A level 1 order needs 1 success on the dice. So each one of these spots is a success, and that's what that needs.
Okay, so let me just... So how do I know how many dice that I have?
Right, at the start of the game, however many command points you've got in your force list, that's how many dice you have.
Okay, so if I have, say, 5 command points,
yep.
I start the game with 5 dice.
Yes.
And then am I spending these?
You are. So, yeah, if you want to give an order, you choose how many of those dice you want to roll to make it succeed. Roll the dice, and you need to get that many successes. So a level 1 order needs 1, a level 2 order needs 2.
So if I have a particular order that I need desperately to get off, I might chuck 2 or even 3 dice or something at it just to see if I can get it off. And in this case, I got a 3 and a 4. Chances are it was a level 3 order.
Yeah.
I've got 4 points, therefore it comes off.
Yes.
But what happens? What's this plus icon then?
There is a chance that you can get the dice back again. So any that come up with a plus, it counts as however many successes it has.
Yeah.
But you also can take the dice back into your pool to use again.
Right. So I can take the chance, and I might also be able to get a dice back to use a bit later. That's very, very nice.
Yeah.
And so that's where that also is going to give an awful lot of flavour to the armies. Are orders standard throughout all the armies, or will they have their own custom orders?
At the moment, we've got about 10 orders that anyone can use. And they are the basic things, like a triple move, or reactivating a unit, or attacking with 2 units at once. Each army then has 2 or 3 of their own orders that only they can do. So the enforcers, for example, they can use the combined attack order, but a normal combined attack order is where 2 units must target the same thing.
Yes.
The enforcers can do 2 completely different things at the same time, which gives them a little bit more flexibility.
Right.
The plague, they've got an order where if they completely destroy an enemy in combat, they can charge someone else.
Yes. Nice.
Yeah. The vermin, because they've got a slightly different army structure, they don't have big units, they have lots of small ones. They've got an order where they can activate everything within 6 inches at once. Yeah. But it only gets a short action.
Now, orders strike me as another opportunity here. Can I only do orders in my turn, or are there any orders that I can do in your activation? Can I interrupt with orders, for example?
Most of the orders do work in your own turn, but there are some that will allow you to react to things. So when you're being charged, there are orders you can give that will allow you to make a different reaction to what you could normally. So you can countercharge, charge back in, or the vermin have one where you can get someone else to charge back in on your behalf.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, just when I thought we were done, we got a big dollop of flavour on top. Stuart, look, thank you so much for taking the time to come in and talk us through the concepts. As this progresses, guys, we're going to have a go at some battle reports on this. I am very, very excited for this. I like this format. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you're doing with Firefight.
Yep, that should be coming very soon.
I know a lot of people are very interested and love the per model basis. I suppose I kind of like the idea of the big battles. I want to get a ton of these flyers on here as well. So, Stuart, thank you very much for taking us through it. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions about the Warpath rules, where they're headed, or suggestions or ideas, why not post them in the comments below, and I'm sure the team from Mantic will be very happy to get in there and answer any questions and feedback to you. Okay, we'll wrap it at that. I'll see you again soon.